Hello everyone, this is Bradley. Today this is a recording of repeated zone performance in Blender geometry nodes. This recording was initially done last May in Blender 4.2, and now 1 year has been passed. It may be interesting to see if things has been changed or improved in Blender 4.4. There is nothing to teach in this recording, and you can download this file for free in my Discord server. You can download this file and to test the number shown on your machine. The main point of this recording is just to test the performance difference where you achieve the exact same result with and without repeated zone. For a very long time, people are asking for the function of loop, and the repeated zone is one type of loop where you basically stack all the functions together in this kind of serial manner, and it's basically the only loop available in 4.2 or something like that, and people are using that, and I've made a tutorial talking about how to use repeated zone to make the instance variation. And it's highly discouraged by developers, but honestly, there were no better methods using repeated zone. That's why I updated another tutorial using the for each element to do the function. While for each element also requires a different performance test, today we're only going to focus on the repeated zone in 4.2 to do the serial loop function. So let's discuss the ideology of this test. In the viewport, you can see there are three setups, and they are identical to each other. This is the major requirement for this test, that due to the same end result, you can compare the performance difference of these three approaches. And basically what we are doing here is just to stack cubes. And the reason a repeated zone is required is because the following cube must know the height of the last cube so that they can stack together without all these kind of intersections. And we have basically two levels of repeat. One level is that we are stacking cubes for one column, and then we repeat the same process but with a different seed on the second column, third column, fourth column, and fifth column, and so on and so forth. Based on this kind of concepts, I made three setups. And the first setup is not to use any repeated zone. The core function is achieved by this accumulate field node that basically has a built-in function of repeated zone in itself. And this was a kind of very old node. It was introduced in geometry nodes like in 3.1. And the reason I'm not interested in to make a tutorial for this setup is because the developer who made these nodes even made a tutorial. This kind of concept has been discussed in other tutorials for many years, so it's not important to repeat the same concept. As you can see, this kind of setup is very simple. And the second setup is that we use a single repeated zone. So I use accumulate field to make up a column, and then I use a repeated zone to instance or to change the seed of different columns. As you can see, there's an loop index attached to the seed. And the third example is to completely abort the accumulate field node, and I'm using a repeated zone to achieve this function. And then I use a second repeated zone to change the seed for different columns. The end result of this test, as you can see, is marked in this file. This was like 57 milliseconds, 3.1 milliseconds, 0.39 milliseconds, so on and so forth. So you can basically see like about 10 times difference whenever you add one more repeater zone. This was initially done on my old laptop. So now my computer has a different configuration and spec. You can see the number is different. Like right now, this is 26 milliseconds, and this is 1.6, and this is 0.2. While I'm having a more powerful CPU to calculate the geometry nodes, it speeds up everything, but the general difference is still about 10 times each steps. Okay. So here, let's go to Blender 4.4 to see if anything changes. So this is basically the same file opened in Blender 4.4. And the first thing you need to make sure is the viewports are still applicable. At least the 3 setups should be identical to each other. Otherwise, it may be largely broken. For example, maybe some link is lost due to whatever reason, then you will have crap result. Okay, so in this case, it's working. Everything is kind of expected. According to the version of your Blender, sometimes you may not expect the exact same result across the Blender version, because at least in Blender 4.5, the seed system in this kind of random value is going to be changed. So 5.0 may have a different viewports in this test, but these 3 setups should have identical results when using the same seed. And in this case, 4.2 and 4.4 are basically having the same viewport results as far as I can see. So I do not see any problems. Okay. It's not very important, but anyway. And looking at the performance, this is 38 milliseconds. And we have 3.3 milliseconds. This is 0.31 milliseconds. For some reason, it seems a little bit slower than the resulting 4.2. It's very difficult to see if this is statistically meaningful, or maybe this is just a kind of random jump of values within the confidence interval. I'm not going to make a statistic analysis of this kind of setup or whatever. And it's not impossible. I reported this to developers to see how they will think about this issue. But anyway, you can still see that at least the general rule of 10 times performance changes hasn't been greatly affected in this setup. However, 4.4 is still having lots of changes in Blender. For example, here you can see in the repeated zone, you have a iteration output. It's actually the index of current iteration, which is equivalent to our loop index. So in 4.2, you cannot find these sockets, but in 4.4, it becomes available. So we no longer need to construct our own loop index, which is basically just the add one function. So if you replace this loop index, with our iteration, you can see immediately you go from 39 milliseconds to 7 milliseconds. So this is a huge performance improvement. Actually, too huge. So it was originally 10 times slower, but now it becomes 2 times slower, which is very nice, like a 5 times faster. Very nice. And what if you replace other loop index with the iteration? When you change something, you always want to make sure the viewport doesn't change, so they are still meaningful and comparable results. This is still like 8 milliseconds. What if I delete this loop index, make sure the viewport doesn't change, and it's not improving a lot? So I guess this is already the maximum that we can improve in this particular case. Yes. And talking about the other setup, you can do this manually too for this kind of change, but it seems not to help anything. So I guess this is already it. There's one more thing that we can potentially change in this setup. Is currently this iteration, this repeated zone is an abuse to change the state for different columns. In reality, it should be using for each element, as I made a tutorial talking about instance variation. I'm not sure if this is realistic to change that in this particular case. Let's do this very quickly. I think I'm going to update this test file as well. Let's take this geometry to it, and we are going to output this to instance. So right now we have a breakage of file because this iteration should attach to the index. So now we can remove this repeated zone because it's no longer relevant. And now if we look at the performance by including everything in the frame, you can see this is 5.1 milliseconds. If you just change that, you can see it's basically still jumping around the area of 7 milliseconds, roughly, while viewport hasn't been changed, so it's a kind of comparable result. So this is kind of a little bit surprising, because I wasn't sure if repeated zone should be identical in with for each element in this case. But this is currently the test result. Of course, this kind of updated file will be shared as well. You can test by yourself about how performance changes with different values. But right now, what I can make a conclusion is that not using repeated zone or for each element is going to give you the best performance, like 20 times, I would say. Yes, about 20 times faster by not using repeated zone and for each element. If you have to use a loop, then sometimes the performance cost will be huge. And according to your setup, you have to optimize that probably at the end of the day. Anyway, the exact setup and the recording posted in 4.2 will be posted in the rest of this video. I'm not sure if you're interested to follow it, but anyway, so I hope you enjoyed this video. I'll see you next time. Bye bye.